Okay, I want you to do something for me just for a second. Close your eyes.
Yeah.
And think about your own body. Feel that solid thing inside you, that structure.
It's a foundation.
Foundation, exactly. Your skeleton. We think of it as, permanent. It's the bedrock that holds you up, protects your organs. It's this amazing piece of biological engineering.
It really is. And it's not just a passive scaffold either. It's a living, dynamic system.
Mhm.
And because it's so dense and, wow, so protected, tucked away deep inside us, it's probably the last place we'd ever worry about when we think about, say, environmental threats.
Right. You worry about your lungs, maybe your stomach, things that are exposed to the outside world.
Exactly.
We just assume our bones are safe, like hermetically sealed. But here is the really disturbing reality check that we uncovered for this deep dive. That fortress, it's been breached. Scientists have now confirmed something that honestly sounds like a horror story. They have found microplastics and nanoplastics.
Right.
Definitively.
Yeah.
Inside human bone tissue.
And that's the finding. That's the chilling discovery that kicked all of this research into high gear. It means the plastics we're breathing, drinking, eating, they're not just passing through.
Right.
They are crossing every single biological barrier we have. The gut lining, the blood-brain barrier. They've even found it crossing the placenta. And now we know they're ending up in the deepest, most protected part of our bodies, the bone marrow. The bone itself.
And this isn't just like a passive buildup, is it? It's not like they're just sitting there.
Not at all. The science we're about to get into shows that once they're there, they are actively causing damage. They are driving the kind of cellular chaos that leads to diseases like osteoporosis.
Wow.
So our mission today is to really unpack this research. We need to understand the scale of this invasion, how these tiny particles act as carriers for other toxins, what's called the Trojan Horse effect, and, most importantly, the exact strategy they use to turn our bone's own maintenance system against itself.
It's a deep dive into how an invisible enemy is compromising the very thing that holds us up.
Let's get into it.
So let's start with the villain of the story, the plastic particle itself. When we talk about this, we're really talking about two things, right? Microplastics and nanoplastics, or MNPs.
Right, and the difference between those two is everything. It's all about scale, because scale determines access to the body.
Okay, so break that down. What's a microplastic?
A microplastic, or an MP, is any particle from about 1 micrometer up to 5 millimeters. So on the big end, it's like a grain of rice, you can see it. But on the small end, 1 micrometer, that's already tiny, a speck of dust.
But the real ghost in the machine, the silent infiltrator, is the nanoplastic. How small are we talking there?
We're talking orders of magnitude smaller. Nanoplastics, or NPs, are anything less than 1 micrometer. So, get this. If you took a single strand of your hair, you could fit tens of thousands of these particles across its width.
No way.
Yeah. They're completely invisible, and that extreme smallness is exactly what makes them so incredibly dangerous. It lets them go places and interact with our cells in ways that bigger particles just can't.
And we're not making these tiny particles on purpose. This isn't some manufactured nanomaterial. It's just
Garbage, right.
It's the ghost of our consumer culture. They come from the slow, relentless breakdown of every plastic thing we've ever made. Your water bottle, your food container, the fleece jacket you're wearing.
So everything plastic is constantly shedding these invisible particles.
Constantly. We rely on these super durable materials, polyethylene, polypropylene, polystyrene, the big ones. They make up about 90% of all the plastic we produce.
And they were all designed to last forever. That was the selling point.
That was the feature, not the bug. And their persistence is just staggering. A disposable diaper might last 500 years in a landfill. A styrofoam cup, we're talking over 5,000 years.
5,000, that's insane.
So these things don't go away. They just break down into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces, becoming more concentrated in our air, our water, and our food over time.
Okay, now this is where it gets even scarier. It's not just the plastic itself. You mentioned this Trojan horse effect. The particle isn't traveling alone. Precisely. This is what turns it from a simple pollutant into a direct, toxic threat. Microplastics are incredibly good at carrying other secondary pollutants.
Why? What makes them so sticky?
Two things. They have a huge surface area for their size, and they're hydrophobic, which means they repel water. So they basically act like little magnets for any oil-based toxins that are floating around in the environment.
So the plastic is the bus, and it's picking up some really bad passengers. What kind of passengers are we talking about?
The worst kind. Endocrine-disrupting chemicals, or EDCs. These are toxic additives they put in plastic during manufacturing. Things you might have heard of, like bisphenols, BPA phthalates, flame retardants, even heavy metals like lead and cadmium.
And these are intentionally added.
Oh yeah, they're there to make the plastic flexible or colorful or stable.
Yeah.
But the key vulnerability, and this is the really crucial part, is that they are not chemically bonded to the plastic.
What does that mean?
It means they're just mixed in like chocolate chicks and cookie dough. There's no strong chemical bond holding them in place, so they can easily leach out.
Leach out. Into what?
Into whatever they're touching, your water, your milk, or, if you've ingested them, into your stomach acid, your blood. They just diffuse right out of the plastic and into your body.
And these EDCs,
Yeah.
because it messes with our hormones, right? That's what endocrine disrupting means.
They completely scramble the signals.
Yeah.
EDCs have a structure that's really similar to our natural hormones, like estrogen. So they can mimic our hormones or block them or just completely mess up how our body produces and uses them. It's like throwing a wrench into the body's entire command center.
The command center being the hypothalamic pituitary axis.
The HPT, HPG, HPA axis, yep. They control stress, growth, metabolism, and critically reproduction. And reproductive hormones are directly linked to bone health, especially in women.
Ah, okay. I see the connection starting to form.
Right. So even before the plastic particle itself starts doing physical damage, its toxic cargo is already messing with the hormonal signals that tell your bones how to maintain themselves.
And we know we're exposed. They found, what, 9 different kinds of plastic in human stool samples all over the world.
The exposure is constant and global. So the next question is, how do they get from our gut into our bones? How does this invasion actually happen?
It's all about the size, right?
That's all about the size. The body has defenses, but they're tailored to specific sizes. So if a particle is, say, bigger than 150 micrometers, it's mostly contained. It might get stuck in the gut lining, but it usually gets excreted.
But the trouble starts when they get smaller.
The real trouble starts under about 5 micrometers, because that's when our own immune system gets tricked into helping them.
Wait, how does that work?
So particles that small get eaten up by our immune cells, mainly these big cleanup cells called macrophages.
Yeah.
A macrophage sees the tiny plastic particle and thinks, invader, so it engulfs it.
Okay, good. The cleanup crew is on the job.
But here's the problem. The macrophage can't destroy it. It can't digest plastic.
So, what happens to the macrophage with a belly full of plastic?
It becomes a transport vehicle, a little plastic-filled taxi. It starts circulating through your blood and your lymph system, and it carries the plastic deep into your major organs, your liver, your spleen.
So our own defense system is literally giving the enemy a ride past all the checkpoints.
It's a perfect, if terrifying, infiltration strategy. And that's just for the microplastics. The nanoplastics are even more insidious.
How so?
The MPs, the ones that are truly invisible, they're so small they can bypass the macrophage system entirely. They can just slip directly through biological membranes.
You mean like right through the cell wall?
Right through. They can cross the blood-brain barrier, which could lead to neurotoxicity. And the most disturbing finding of all, they can cross the placenta.
The plasticenta. I saw that term in the research. It's haunting.
It is. It means exposure begins in the womb. The one barrier that's supposed to protect a developing fetus from toxins is permeable to these nanoplastics.
So this isn't just about us anymore. This is about what we're passing on before a child is even born.
It completely shifts the timeline. The risk to skeletal growth, to brain development, it could be starting from the moment of conception. So, yeah, we have this constant stream of toxins carried by particles the body can't clear, accumulating in our organs and crossing every last line of defense. That's the stage. Now, let's talk about the specific attack on the skeleton.
Okay, so the invaders have reached the target, the bone. To really get what happens next, we need to understand that bone isn't just a static thing. You called it a construction site earlier.
It's a perpetual construction site. It's constantly being remodeled. In fact, you basically get a whole new skeleton every 10 years or so.
Wow.
And this remodeling process is all about a very delicate balance between two teams of cells, the builders and the demolition crew.
Okay, I like this analogy. Let's stick with that. Who are the builders?
The builders are cells called osteoblasts. They're the construction crew. Their job is to lay down new bone tissue, to synthesize the collagen matrix, and then mineralize it with calcium. They build things up.
And the demolition team.
Those are the osteoclasts. They are the wrecking crew. They secrete acids and enzymes that dissolve old or damaged bone. That process is called resorption, and it's essential for clearing the way for the new, stronger stuff.
So as long as the builders are building at the same rate the wrecking crew is wrecking, your bones stay strong and dense.
Perfect balance. But if the wrecking crew goes into overdrive or if the construction crew just, stops showing up for work,
The whole thing falls apart.
you get a net loss of bone mass. The internal structure weakens, and you end up with fragile bones that are prone to breaking. That is the literal definition of osteoporosis.
So the first thing scientists had to prove was that the microplastics could even get to this construction site, which is deep inside the bone marrow, where these cells come from.
Right. And they confirmed that, but just finding them there wasn't enough. They had to see if the cells themselves would actually interact with the plastic.
This is where they did the lab tests, right? Mixing the cells and the plastic in a dish.
Exactly. They used a specific type of pre-osteoblast cell, an apprentice builder, basically. And they introduced polystyrene microplastics and watched what happened under a super powerful microscope.
And what did they see?
They saw the cells literally eat the plastic. They watched them engulf the particles, pulling them inside.
That's a huge moment.
Yeah.
That's the smoking gun. It proves direct contact between the pollutant and the cellular machinery that runs our skeleton.
It confirmed the plastics were inside the cells, acting as an internal contaminant. But the problem doesn't just stop with the builders, it goes all the way up to the management.
The management.
The progenitor cells, the stem cells in the bone marrow that decide what the future of the construction site is going to be.
These are the bone marrow mesenchymal stem cells, the BMSCs.
That's them. Think of them as the general manager of the whole operation. They're pluripotent, which means they can decide to become a bunch of different things. Muscle cells, fat cells, or, most importantly, osteoblasts, the builders.
So in a healthy system, the manager's priority is hiring more construction workers.
Right, prioritizing bone building. But what the research shows is that when microplastics are around, they mess with the manager's decision-making.
Yeah.
They impaired the differentiation. So instead of the stem cells committing to becoming bone builders, they get shunted down a different path. They start becoming adipocytes.
Adipocytes are...
Fat cells.
Wait, so the manager, under the influence of plastic, stops hiring builders and instead just starts stockpiling fat inside the bone marrow.
Exactly. And that's a disaster. You get a double whammy. You have fewer new builders being created, so bone formation goes down, and you get an increase in fatty tissue within the bone itself, which further weakens the structure.
Wow. Okay, so to see how this plays out in a real living system, not just a petri dish, they had to do the big chronic exposure study.
This was the main event. They took mice and they basically simulated long-term human exposure. They put polystyrene microplastics in their drinking water for 6 months straight.
What was the dose?
It was 10 milligrams per liter. And that was specifically designed to mimic the kind of chronic, low-level exposure we're all getting from our food and water over the years.
Okay, I have to ask about that, though. 10 milligrams per liter. Is that actually a realistic number for what we're drinking? It sounds kind of high.
That's a fantastic and really critical question, and it's a huge point of debate in the scientific community right now. It's a limitation we have to acknowledge.
So it might be higher than a glass of tap water.
It might be, but the researchers argue that it represents a cumulative dose, what you get from your bottled water, plus your food, plus the air you breathe, all added up over time. But you're right, the next step for this research absolutely has to be using what they call environmentally relevant concentrations, or ERCs. We need that data for real policymaking.
Got it. So even with that caveat, what did they find in the mice after 6 months of this exposure?
The results were shocking, just undeniable. They looked at the femurs, the thigh bones, and they saw a severe deterioration of the microarchitecture.
The microarchitecture, what does that mean in simple terms?
So inside your bones, you have this intricate, spongy lattice work of struts and beams. It's called trabecular bone. It's what gives the bone its strength.
Like the internal scaffolding of a building.
Perfect analogy. And what they found in these mice was that the scaffolding was crumbling. They measured a huge reduction in the number and the thickness of these trabeculae. The struts were thinner and there were fewer of them.
So basically, they found osteoporosis.
They found the structural fingerprint of severe osteoporosis, a massive loss of bone strength, directly caused by the plastic.
And that's in adult mice. The studies on younger animals were even worse, right?
Oh, much worse. In young rats, the exposure actually interrupted skeletal growth. It stopped their bones from developing properly, and in some cases, it caused dysplasia.
Dysplasia is abnormal growth.
Malformed, abnormally structured bone. The plastic was literally throwing a wrench in the gears of development, causing weakness and potential deformities. It just reinforces that the threat is most severe when a system is actively trying to build and organize itself.
Okay, so we have the invader inside the bone. We have the result, a crumbling skeleton. Now for the big discovery, the how. What is the actual weapon that the plastic is using at the molecular level?
The primary weapon is, it's actually surprisingly simple but devastating. It's the creation of massive oxidative stress.
Oxidative stress, I've heard that term. What is it really?
So the microplastics, once they're inside the bone cells, cause a massive overproduction of something called reactive oxygen species, or ROS. These are basically highly unstable, super reactive little molecules, free radicals.
Okay, let's use an analogy here. The cell is an organized city running smoothly. What are ROS in that city?
ROS are like a sudden, chaotic traffic jam flooding every street. They're like thousands of sparking, out-of-control cars crashing into everything. They just create chaos.
And what are they crashing into?
Everything. DNA, proteins, the cell membrane, they cause widespread damage. And the plastic particles seem to be the direct trigger for this explosion of ROS.
Does this cell have, like, a police force or a fire department to handle this chaos?
It does. It has natural antioxidant systems controlled by genes like SOD1 and CAT. They're designed to neutralize these free radicals. But get this, the research showed that the microplastics don't just start the fires.
They disable the fire department, too.
They actively suppress the genes that run the antioxidant system. So it's a two-pronged attack. You get a flood of ROS and you shut down the system designed to clean it up. That sustained, unchecked chaos is oxidative stress.
So let's trace that chaos back to our construction site. What happens to the builders, the osteoblasts, when they're under this much stress?
They get crushed. The oxidative stress makes them less efficient at building bone. But more importantly, the ROS cause them to age prematurely. That's called senescence, and it triggers apoptosis.
Which is programmed cell death.
They're literally being told to self-destruct.
So, let's recap. The general manager is making fat instead of builders. And the few builders left on the job are either getting old too fast or being killed off by this ROS chaos.
Exactly. Bone formation just grinds to a halt. But here's the crazy paradox. While the builders are dying, the wrecking crew, the Osteoclasts, are getting a massive power-up.
How is that possible? How can the same chaotic thing have two opposite effects?
Because the ROS, this oxidative stress, it acts as a very specific go signal for the wrecking crew. They found that ROS specifically activates these communication lines in the cell called the MAPK pathways.
MAPK. What do those pathways usually do?
They're involved in all sorts of things, stress response, cell growth. But when they get hyperactivated by the oxidative stress from the plastic, it's like a turbocharger for the cells that become osteoclasts. It screams the message, differentiate, become wreckers, start dissolving bone now.
So the balance is just completely shattered. You've got no one building and a demolition crew working triple overtime.
And that leads us to the master switch. The one key mechanism that the Pan et al. Research group identified, the big one, the NF-kappa B signaling pathway.
NF-key, I know that one. It's usually tied to inflammation, right?
A major regulator of inflammation and the immune response. And what they found is that the polystyrene microplastics directly activate this pathway, and its activation is the core step that turns on all the genes needed for the wrecking crew to mature and get to work.
So if MAPK is the turbocharger, NF-key is the final ignition switch that launches the whole demolition process into hyperdrive.
That's the perfect way to think about it. And this is where the research gets really exciting, because if you find the switch, you can try to turn it off.
They tried to block it.
They did.
Yeah.
This is the coolest part. They gave the mice that were exposed to the plastic a specific drug, an NF-UB inhibitor, that blocks this pathway.
What happened?
They reversed the bone loss.
Wait, what? Even with the plastic still in their system?
Even with the plastic still there. As soon as they blocked the NF-U switch, the hyperactivation of the wrecking crew stopped. The demolition stopped. And the bone architecture began to stabilize.
That's incredible. That's not just a finding. That's a vulnerability. It's a specific weak point in the attack.
It is.
But I have to ask, if we have a drug that can do this, why aren't we using it to treat osteoporosis right now? Is it safe?
And that is exactly the right question. The inhibitor they used is a powerful research tool. It proves the mechanism, but NF-U is involved in thousands of critical things in your body. Your immune system, fighting cancer.
You can't just shut it down everywhere.
You can't. You'd cause massive side effects. But the takeaway isn't the drug itself, it's the confirmed target. We now know the exact pathway that the plastic exploits. And that means future research can focus on developing much more specific, targeted drugs that can block the plastic's effect without shutting down your whole immune system.
That makes sense. So to put it all together, the microplastic gets in, creates a firestorm of oxidative stress, which then flips the NFP and MAPK switches, creating a total catastrophe on the construction site. More wreckers, fewer builders, and the whole structure starts to fail.
That is the mechanism of attack.
And we've spent a lot of time on the skeleton, but this is obviously so much bigger. The damage isn't just in the bones. This is a systemic multi-organ problem.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that these plastic particles bioaccumulate and carry those EDCs, the endocrine disruptors, it means they're hitting every major system in the body. Remember, those EDCs are scrambling the hormonal command center, the axes that control your thyroid, your stress response, everything.
And how does that hormonal chaos loop back to bone health?
We'll take estrogen. Estrogen is a key hormone that normally puts the brakes on the wrecking crew, the osteoclasts. So if EDCs are blocking or mimicking estrogen, that hormonal brake is gone, so you're getting hit from two sides. The plastic particle itself starts the fire with ROS, and its toxic cargo cuts the brakes that would normally slow down the destruction.
And we're seeing this kind of systemic damage pop up everywhere the researchers look, especially in reproductive health.
The evidence there is overwhelming. In males, the plastics build up in the testes, they cause inflammation, lower sperm quality, and they disrupt this crucial shield called the blood-testis barrier.
Which is supposed to protect developing sperm.
Right. So breaching that wall makes them much more vulnerable to toxins.
And in females.
We see the same oxidative stress happening in the ovaries. It leads to fewer egg follicles, abnormal follicle development. It directly impacts fertility and hormone production, which, again, just makes the skeletal risk even worse.
And it doesn't even stop there. The research also pointed to problems in the bone marrow's other job.
The non-skeletal functions, yeah. The bone marrow is where you make all of your blood cells. It's called hematopoiesis. And MNP exposure seems to disrupt that process, which could lead to things like anemia or a compromised immune system.
So your bones are getting weaker, and your ability to make blood is being damaged at the same time.
And they also found evidence it contributes to muscle atrophy. So the muscles that support the weakened skeleton are also wasting away. The entire musculoskeletal system is under attack.
It's a cascade of failures. Given all this, there must be groups who are more vulnerable than others.
Definitely. The research points to two key demographics. First, postmenopausal women.
Why them specifically?
Because that group is already at a higher risk for osteoporosis due to the natural decline in estrogen. Their bone balance is already shifting toward more resorption, toward the wrecking crew. So when you add microplastics to the mix, which turbocharge that wrecking crew through the NFB pathway, you create a perfect storm for rapid, severe bone loss.
A threat multiplier.
A massive one. And the second group is, well, it's the most vulnerable group of all. Children in developing systems.
Because of the placenta?
Because of the placenta. Exposure in the womb and through mother's milk means the very foundation of life is being laid on toxic ground. It can interrupt skeletal growth, cause dysplasia, and the early life disruption to the endocrine system could have lifelong consequences for metabolism and health.
The problem feels huge.
Yeah.
But the fact that we know the molecular steps, that we know about ROS and NFP, that gives us a target, right? So what's the path forward?
Scientifically, the path is intervention. Now that we know oxidative stress is the weapon, maybe we can develop highly targeted antioxidant therapies, not just for bone loss, but to protect other organs from this plastic-induced damage.
And for policymakers, what's the big hurdle they need to get over?
It's what you brought up earlier, standardization. We need studies that use those environmentally relevant concentrations, the ERCs. We have to know what real-world exposure levels are actually doing to us. Without that hard data, it's very difficult for policymakers to justify the drastic changes we need to make to curb global plastic production.
So the lab science has to meet the real-world data to actually drive change. Because at the end of the day, no pill is going to fix this if we're still drowning in the source of the problem.
Exactly. Prevention has to start at the factory and at the faucet.
We started this deep dive talking about the skeleton, this symbol of strength. And we've tracked this invisible villain, the microplastic, acting as a Trojan horse for toxins. We found it has breached the deepest parts of our body, our very bones, and we've mapped out its attack strategy, create a firestorm of oxidative stress, flip the NFE switch, and turn our body's own maintenance crews against each other, leading to total structural failure.
And knowing that is incredibly powerful. This isn't just some vague pollution problem anymore. We have a detailed molecular map of the attack. The fact that they could reverse the damage in a living animal just by blocking that one NFE pathway, That is the clearest proof you could ask for. This is a predictable, addressable disease mechanism, and it's driven entirely by our own environmental contamination.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to take away. Your skeleton is designed to last a lifetime, to withstand incredible forces, to constantly repair itself. It's the definition of durability. If that bedrock system is being steadily dismantled, being driven into a state of disease by something as trivial as our dependence on single-use plastic, if it forces the body to literally attack its own foundation with chaotic free radicals, what do you think is happening to the softer, less protected organs in your body? We have to start asking, what is the true multi-generational cost of this invisible invasion on the fundamental blueprint of human life?